Okay, my name is Tim Klein. I'm a registered psychologist and I'm a psychotherapist. So I have qualifications in both psychology and psychotherapy, as well as in youth work. And I've been working in the field for about 20 years. A lot of my work has involved working with issues of sexuality amongst same-sex attracted young people as well as same-sex attracted adults. And just to kind of fill in my background a bit, this has included being involved in doing a lot of counselling and therapy with same-sex attracted young men and women and same-sex attracted adults and their families, as well as being involved in organising one of the first conferences that looked at issues of suicide and self-harm amongst same-sex attracted young people, and in the second conference that looked at issues of addressing homophobia in the school system. As well as that, I've done extensive training with youth workers, human service workers, etc. in southeast Queensland regarding best practice around working with same-sex attracted young people. So it's an area I feel quite passionate about. So that's my background. In terms of the unequal age of consent, I mean, bottom line is it's another piece of discrimination. It's many years ago when I was in a position of first starting to train workers in regards to working with same-sex attracted young people. I spent quite a bit of time trying to sort of distill a lot of the research I was coming across how socialisation worked in our culture, and I suppose one of the things that the words I ended up with were that, in essence, how society teaches young people three things. They teach people that they need to be heterosexual. They teach people that they shouldn't be homosexual, and they don't teach people about being homosexual. So you've got your blatant heterosexism and all the models around heterosexuality, which a lot of heterosexuals have to try and find their way out of anyway, because they're quite rigid. And then you've got the covert homophobia of you shouldn't be gay and all the things that are wrong with that. And then there's the overt homophobia, and then there's the covert homophobia, which is where young people aren't presented with positive role models of adult gays and lesbians, and there's a whole silence around the reality of being gay. Now that those three things together those three things work together quite well and are oppressive for everyone in our culture. There's quite huge links, particularly in Australian culture, between homophobia and the construction, particularly of masculine identity, in that basically guys learn from an early age that you prove that you're a real man by proving that you're not a poofter. And that's quite oppressive for straight men. The bits of themselves that they have to cut off to fit into that tiny little box. So those three things that people are taught, that I was referring to, they're oppressive for everyone, but for people who are actually same-sex attracted, for people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, it's actually a source of trauma, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a form of systemic abuse. Now I've been saying this for about probably about 10 years now, that this is a form of systemic abuse, and I think what the research is showing more and more is that yes, it is a form of abuse, and the impact of that abuse. So the research around that is starting to come out more and more. I know when I first started saying it back to other therapists and other human service workers back in the mid-90s, to referring to this socialisation as a form of abuse, actually got some responses of kind of like, oh God, how can you use that word? Like that's a bit strong, isn't it? Now when I talk about it, there's no response like that. There's seems to me that there's a growing realisation, particularly amongst the sector I work in, that yes, this is a form of abuse. Now, it's a form of systemic abuse. It's can be exacerbated by what might happen in an individual's particular family or particular school, but it's systemic in that it's like it's across the culture. And when we look at the laws in our culture, those laws support that systemic abuse. So the laws regarding same-sex marriage, civil unions, laws regarding superannuation, etc., etc., etc. But then here in Queensland, when we look at the age of consent, that's another example of where you've got legislation that supports, and is that not only supports but actually is part of that systemic abuse of same-sex attracted young people, that very clearly gives out the message of you're not equal. It's and if you're not equal, then you're less than. It's not that you're better than, you're less than.
Now the government actually says that this issue, the unequal age of consent, is something that they don't have to pay particular attention to because they consider it to just be a vexed issue, that there are strongly held opinions for and against. But would you consider that the psychological welfare of youth is such that they should be paying much more attention to this issue?
Well, it's an issue of discrimination. The bottom line is it's an issue of discrimination. So it means that same-sex attracted young people do not have the same rights as opposite-sex attracted young people. I mean, for that alone, it's an issue that needs to be paid attention to and needs to be addressed.
And you've pointed out that the lack of acceptance that's already existent within our society for same-sex attracted youth as they're developing through their teenage years, that actually constitutes a form of abuse. So would you expect then that if the law was changed, if the age of consent was made equal at 16 for everybody, for all sexual activities, that would then enable youth to have a better chance of developing to be people with greater self-esteem, greater respect for others?
I think it's part of it. It's one part of it. It's an important part of it, and it's only one part of it, and it's a part of it that needs to change. I mean, what the research shows is that for an individual who's same-sex attracted, all other things in their life being equal, the development of a positive sexual identity represents a form of developmental crisis, kind of like a speed bump that they have to go over, and that once that's actually resolved, the mental health of same-sex attracted people is pretty much on par with the mental health of heterosexual people once they can get over that speed bump. Now, things like the unequal age of consent, things like same-sex couples not having the same rights regarding their relationships, these are the things that make getting over that speed bump more difficult, and also means that once you've got over that speed bump, yes, you may have developed a positive sexual identity, but it still means that you're in a situation where you don't have the same rights as your heterosexual counterparts, and that can have that discrimination and the message of inferiority, the message of lack of acceptance, the message of contempt that those lack of equal rights give, that can then have ongoing psychological impacts on same-sex attracted individuals.
Tim Klein, thank you very much.